Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. If you were with us earlier this evening, this is round 2 of possibly 3 for SpaceX as they hope to set off 3 Falcon 9 rockets from their 3 pads across the country, 2 from here in Florida, 1 from California at Vandenberg Space Force Base. Right now, we are T-minus 1 hour, 20 seconds away from the planned launch of the Starlink 6-45 mission. This set to take off from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson-Smith. I'll be providing our commentary for the duration of this coverage. We are broadcasting once again from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Our Stephen Young is back running the technical operations of the broadcast. Our ace photography team of Adam Bernstein and Michael Kane out in the field getting ready to snap some pictures of this Falcon 9 once it takes flight. If you're not already following them on X, give you another chance from before. You can find Adam at ABurnNYC, Burn with an E. Michael Kane is at MD Kane Jr. You can also find Spaceflight Now on X, simply at Spaceflight Now. We are also on Threads, Facebook, and Instagram. Maybe TikTok. Maybe Blue Sky. Not right now, but possibly in the future. We are also joined this evening by our friends Pete Karstens with Max Q Productions and Chuck Briggs with help tracking this rocket tonight. The launch of the Starlink Group 6-45 mission will not only be, if successful, the second Falcon flight of the evening, this will also be the 31st mission for SpaceX, an orbital flight in 2024. This will also be the 20th dedicated Starlink satellite, sending up another batch of the V2 Mini variety of satellites this year. Currently, SpaceX is targeting a T0 liftoff time of 9:02 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That is 01:02 UTC. If you'd like to help support our coverage of the space program, it's a quick and easy way to do that. For the more than 2,700 of you that are joining with us live, just by hitting the like button on this video. You can also share the stream. And if you're not already, now is as good a time as any to subscribe to Spaceflight Now. And when you do, click the bell icon. Make sure all notifications are turned on. And as I was just about to build up to, this mission does have a launch window that lasts until 10 p.m. and SpaceX, taking full advantage of that, they have actually adjusted the T0 liftoff time for this mission. It is now set for 9:30 p.m. Eastern. That is 01:30 UTC, so we are resetting our countdown clock. Time currently stands at T-minus 1 hour, 25 minutes, 14 seconds and counting. We are powered here at Spaceflight Now by our wonderful channel members, so thanks to folks like Debbie Sunset, Tiger, Mary Painter, Butterfly, That Opal Guy, John Cipolla, Bet Mulligan, Callistia Lee, Cheryl Robertson, The Nebish, and many others for joining us with channel membership. In fact, Callistia Lee just added 10 more to that roster, so if you are one of those new channel members, be sure to thank her in the live chat. Also, thanks to one of our fabulous moderators, Astro Jen, for gifting a Spaceflight Now membership. Really appreciate that, Astro Jen. And thank you to her, as well as our other moderators who are helping out with today's live stream here, the second one, as well as the one before, and continuously on Launchpad Live. So thanks to Rusty Shackelford, to Astro Joe, Stephanie B. Really appreciate you guys and all you do for us. I want to also welcome a couple new channel members. Mike G joining us at the pad leader level, and Ion Ursasis. And apologies if I just completely butchered the pronunciation of your name. But thanks for joining us with channel membership at the pad leader level. Very much appreciate that. Channel membership comes with a number of perks. Discounts at our online shop, shop.spaceflightnow.com, as well as access to 4K views for all of our Cape-based launches, and access to member-only videos here on YouTube. Again, if you're just popping in the stream, want to note that just a hair after we got started here, SpaceX adjusted the T0 liftoff time for this mission. They do have an hour of their launch window if they haven't started fueling, so they've opted to shift the target liftoff time for this. Now is set for 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 01:30 UTC. So our T0 countdown clock stands at T-minus 1 hour, 22 minutes, 48 seconds and counting. Another great way to support what we do here at Spaceflight Now. Also, if you'd like to join in the conversation about this or other missions, it's by using the YouTube Super Chat feature. Not only do you give us fun things to talk about as we continue on our countdown, or possibly answer a question that you may have about really anything pertaining to space that we can hopefully answer for you, but you're also helping to improve our coverage by helping invest in the physical and software infrastructure that makes these live streams possible. It takes a village and a whole heck of a lot of cable to make these streams work. We very much appreciate you helping to improve that process as we continue on with a very busy 2024. And so our thanks to channel member Paragon Universal with a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Paragon. Really appreciate that. It says simply, love you guys. We love you back. Our thanks also to channel member Marcus Gallegos for gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships. Thank you so much, Marcus, for sharing some generosity as we kick things off. And to our 5 newest channel members, first off, welcome aboard. Glad to have you with us. And if you haven't already, be sure to thank Marcus in the live chat. We hope you enjoy your time as channel members. We hope you stick around. With a little bit of extra time, we'll go ahead and talk about the trajectory now, and we will revisit it as we continue to step on a little bit later on in the countdown. But let's go ahead and bring that up here.
Don't let me go. No, don't let me go.
This trajectory will feel much more familiar for those who are used to Falcon 9 flights supporting Starlink missions. It is their most off-launch payload, of course, as they've launched 20 of those, or this will be the 20th on the year. Falcon 9 rocket getting ready to lift off from Slick 40, Space Launch Complex 40 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Falcon 9 will fly in a southeasterly trajectory, with the drone ships separating and landing on one of SpaceX's 3 drone ships. The one, of course, on deck for this mission is a Shortfall Gravitas. The other drone ship, if you weren't with us for our last launch, which was just a mere few hours ago, just to read the instructions, was out supporting the landing of booster tail number 1076 in the SpaceX fleet on the Eutelsat 36D mission. That was the successful 12th launch and landing of that booster. Now that it's touched down the drone ship, it'll make its way back to Port Canaveral. for assessment, refurbishment, and will turn around for a future flight. The booster supporting this particular mission on deck right now, this is B-1067. It's going for its 18th flight tonight. We'll talk a little bit more about its booster history as we roll on through the count. Of course, the payload fairings are also recovered as part of this mission. SpaceX has 2 recovery vessels that it uses for this recovery process. During the previous mission that just launched, Eutelsat 36D, they were using the recovery vessel Bob, which means Doug is up to bat next. Of course, it and Bob were named after former NASA astronauts Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken, the duo that flew aboard the Demo 2 mission back in May of 2020, kicking off the first crewed flight as part of NASA's Commercial Crew program. The next chapter of Commercial Crew getting ready to take a step forward with the crewed launch of Boeing's Starliner spacecraft. Had the opportunity to truck on down to Johnson Space Center, talk with the 2 astronauts, Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams, who will be the duo flying aboard that first crewed flight of Starliner, heading up to the International Space Station for a mission lasting around 8 or 9 days, depending on whether it's splashdown and how everything goes. That mission currently set to lift off from Space Launch Complex 41 no earlier than May 1st. A couple of items need to happen before the firm date is set for that, and that's really locked into place. The first, of course, is the Cargo Dragon spacecraft that is currently docked to the space-facing port, or the zenith port of the Harmony module. That will need to undock and head back down for a splashdown off the coast of Florida, bringing some science with it. They're also going to relocate the Crew Dragon spacecraft that brought the Crew 8 astronauts up to the ISS. That'll need to shuffle over from the forward port to the zenith port. That'll open up the pathway for Starliner to be able to dock to that forward-facing port. Assuming a launch on May 1st, it would allow for a docking on May 2nd, but again, those dates are contingent upon those previous items I just mentioned, the removal of the Cargo Dragon and the reshuffling of the Crew Dragon. Very busy time on the space station. Of course, there's also the Sierra Space Dream Chaser spacecraft, which is getting ready to make its way down to Florida for its final preparations ahead of its planned launch to the ISS. That happening likely sometime this summer. Set to be the second flight of United Launch Alliance's Vulcan rocket, also launching from Slick 41. Those payload fairings I mentioned, they splashed down from Falcon 9 flights under parachutes where they are recovered, saving SpaceX about $6 million per recovery. This is what it looks like when they are brought aboard those recovery vessels. Again, Doug is the ship that's going to be used for this mission. We're now T-minus 1 hour, 14 minutes, 50 seconds and counting as it currently stands. SpaceX does have an hour window for this mission and several opportunities baked in. So as long as they have not started fueling, they can continue to shuffle back in this hour-long window that lasts until 10 p.m. Eastern, 0200 UTC. We will continue to keep you updated if and when they do make another pivot in this countdown. Your T-minus 1 hour, 12 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. The weather for this Starlink 6-45 mission just as good as the Eutelsat 36D, better than 95% favorable. And taking a look at the satellite view here, you can see some wispy clouds moving away from the Cape here on Florida's Space Coast. Conditions fairly optimal for this launch. Just the thick cloud layer rule was the only watch item. But again, just about as good as it gets from a weather standpoint. So that should not be an issue or a watch item tonight, which is certainly good news. Taking a look back at our live chat here. I want to thank Mike Dewar for being a channel member at the pad leader level for 5 months. Really appreciate that, Mike. Thanks for your ongoing support. Asking when the Falcon Heavy launches now. Believe the first Falcon Heavy of the year will be the GOES-U satellite, launching on behalf of NOAA into NASA. That'll lift off on board a Falcon Heavy, currently targeting launch on June 25th. So, got a ways to go before we get a Falcon Heavy flight, unfortunately, for fans of that launch vehicle. Had 5 of them last year. We may have... See, there's that one. There's the Europa Clipper mission, which is set to launch in October. So just scrolling through what we're tracking, I believe those two that I mentioned are the only two Falcon Heavies currently on the calendar for 2024. Those being the Europa Clipper mission, which is not until October, and then Goes You, which is launching, again, currently on June 25th. So thank you for the question. Thank you for your channel membership. Also want to thank channel member Chris Mars for a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Chris. Really appreciate that. Chris says, hello, all newcomers and regulars. We'll be watching from OSB 2, 5th floor, right across from the VAB, which is quite a lovely vantage point. Awesome coverage as always, folks. Keep it up. Well, thank you so much, Chris, for the kind words and for the support. Hopefully we will see 3 Falcon 9 launches tonight. Of course, weather still the big question mark when it comes to the Starlink 7-18 mission in Southern California. Sounds like things may, and I'm going to put the heaviest underlining and asterisks all around the word may, start to improve toward the end of that window, but TBD on that. Also want to welcome another new channel member, Bill Womble, joining us at the Mission Specialist level. Welcome aboard, Bill. Glad to have you with us. As we continue to track the launch of this second mission from Florida Space Coast so far today, let's take a moment. If you weren't with us for our last live coverage, or you happened to peel out before we went through our launch replay, here's a look one more time back. This is the launch of the Eutelsat 36D satellite, as captured by our very own Adam Bernstein's cameras. Fortunately, the launch lifted off right at the start of what could have been a nearly 4-hour launch window, but thankfully we didn't have to wait nearly that long. Right at 5:52 p.m., well ahead of sunset here in Florida. That Falcon 9 rocket taking off against a bright blue sky over the Sunshine State. That little donut effect you see there, not actually the Falcon 9 rocket punching through a cloud, but more so creating its own little bit of shock effect. Great tracking views from Adam this afternoon. And we very much look forward to seeing what he cooks up for this next launch, which again currently is targeting a liftoff at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 01:30 UTC.
Páscoa Presunic, variedade para toda a família.
Até domingo exclusivo Cliente Clube, azeite extra virgem, Bosch 250 ml, 18,99.
Páscoa é Presunic.
as we are now approaching just about an hour away from the new T0 time for this mission. Let's go ahead and step through the countdown timeline for this Falcon 9 flight. If you were here with us before, this will be eerily familiar. But if you're just joining us for the first time this evening, if you had other things going on this Saturday, well, we're glad to see you tonight. Let's go ahead and let you know what we're watching and waiting for coming up. At T-minus 38 minutes, that's the point in which the SpaceX launch director will verify the go for the start of prop load. If that go-ahead is given, that'll begin at T-minus 35 minutes, the loading of RP-1 or rocket-grade kerosene on board both the first and the second stages of the launch vehicle. At the same time, liquid oxygen is loaded on board the Falcon 9's first stage. T-minus 16 minutes, second stage LOX load begins. Before that happens, though, we'll see that striking event, the so-called big vent, as the feed lines are chilled and prior to second stage LOX load. T-minus 7 minutes, chill down of the 9 Merlin 1D engines gets underway. It involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and the turbo pumps. It's important because it helps protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes before launch, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back begin to retract away from the Falcon 9 rocket. It'll begin with the clamp arms underneath payload fairings opening up. Then the strong back, or the transporter erector, will recline about 1.5 degrees away from the Falcon 9. It stays in that position until liftoff. At that point, it will pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. About 2 minutes out, liquid oxygen load should be complete on the second stage, marking the fully fueled Falcon 9, topped off with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director gives their go for liftoff at 45 seconds out. The engine ignition command is issued at T-minus 3 seconds. And of course, if all 9 Merlin 1D engines are healthy and ignite, the flight computer will give the command for the hold down clamps to release the vehicle at T0 again, currently targeting 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 01:30 UTC. This is where we stand after our last launch just hours ago, Eutelsat 36D. SpaceX now 30 launches on the year, looking for 31 in T-minus 1 hour, 1 minute, and 30 seconds. We're now T-minus 58 minutes, 32 seconds and counting. About 20 or so minutes away from the point at which SpaceX will make the call on the start of prop load. Again, they do have multiple opportunities for this mission within this roughly hour, so if they do need to push back the T0 again, they have that opportunity as long as fueling has not begun. SpaceX is running its countdown from the Hangar X site here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. It's the facility where they refurbish Falcon boosters and prepare them for future flights, as is the case with the vehicle you see here on your screen, Booster 1067 in the SpaceX fleet. SpaceX also has support in part from its headquarters in Hawthorne, California. T0 for now remains at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 01:30 UTC. If for whatever reason things don't line up for a launch tonight of this mission, SpaceX does have additional opportunities during a window on Sunday, March 31st that start at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. On board this Falcon flight, number 2 of the evening, are a batch of 23 Starlink V2 mini satellites. Earlier this week, SpaceX noted that Argentina became the 72nd country globally to allow the Starlink service to be accessed. It's with Argentina filled in that bright blue, which notes the countries where service is currently available. The dark blue shade suggests countries that are in the works or pending. And dark gray is unavailable. This is the current map of accessibility for Starlink satellite service. T-minus 54 minutes, 56 seconds and counting. This is what the Starlink V2 minis look like in their launch configuration. This is a stack of them just before one of the earliest launches of the V2 mini variety. This will be the 20th launch of Starlink satellites so far this year, each coming in at about 1,760 pounds or 800 kilograms. With their solar panels unfurled, they have a wingspan of about 100 feet or 30 meters. They use argon hull thrusters for in-orbit maneuvers, replacing the previously used Krypton thrusters. They are built in Redmond, Washington, nearish to Seattle. They'll be deployed at about 200 miles or 320 kilometers in altitude at a 43-degree inclination. While we have not received an image from SpaceX of what the V2 minis look like in their on-orbit configuration, this is a photo snapped by an HEO Robotics satellite of one of the Starlink V2 minis. This captured last year by one of those satellites. when compared to their predecessor, the V2 minis do have quite a bit more robustness built into them. They have 4 times the capacity of the previous generations of satellites. They introduced E-band for backhaul. They have upgraded phased array antennas. They're about 2.6 times heavier than the version 1.5 satellites. And again, they use argon Hall thrusters, replacing the previously used krypton thrusters. And this is what an argon Hall thruster looks like when it is firing. We're now T-minus 52 minutes, 25 seconds and counting. Now T-minus 50 minutes and counting. Taking a peek at our live chat. Want to thank a few more folks for their support this evening. Our thanks to Nelson Reyes, one of our wonderful channel members, for gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships. Thank you so much, Nelson. Also to Paragon Universal for gifting a Spaceflight Now membership as well. And to Psychonaut69, also gifting a Spaceflight Now membership. Really appreciate the 3 of you for the generosity. And if you are one of our newest channel members, first off, welcome aboard. Glad to have you with us. Be sure to thank Nelson, Paragon, or Psychonaut in the live chat if you haven't already. And to the more than 5,600 of you that are now watching with us live, first off, glad you could be with us this evening. If you're joining us again after the Eutelsat 36D launch, welcome back. If you are joining us for the first time tonight, welcome aboard. You're watching our live coverage of the Starlink 6-45 mission, currently in progress. Currently tracking a T0 liftoff of 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 01:30 UTC. Once the launch goes forward, let's talk about the timeline of events that will happen once the Falcon 9 leaves the pad. Again, we're at T-minus 48 minutes, 20 seconds and counting, so just about 10 minutes away from the SpaceX team making the call on the start of prop load tonight. But assuming we do see a launch at 9:30, following liftoff, Falcon 9 will pass through maximum aerodynamic pressure, or max Q, at T plus 1 minute, 12 seconds. That'll be followed by a few different events in pretty rapid succession. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, at T plus 2 minutes and 26 seconds. That'll be followed by stage separation at T plus 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Second stage engine ignition, or SES-1, 2 minutes and 36 seconds. And then payload fairing jettison just a little after 3 minutes into flight. A couple minutes later, we'll see the first stage entry burn begin, at 22-second burn. Really slamming the brakes, slowing down that first stage as it makes its way down to the drone ship. Again, for this mission, they're using a Shortfall of Gravitas. The drone ship, just read the instructions, was just used on the Eutelsat 36D mission. T plus 8 minutes and 4 seconds, the first stage landing burn begins, setting up for a touchdown on a Shortfall of Gravitas at T plus 8 minutes and 26 seconds. T plus 8 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll see the cutoff of that Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage. It'll go into a parking orbit. Following that coast phase, at T plus 54 minutes and 3 seconds, there will be a brief 1 second burn, setting up for Starlink satellite deployment at T plus 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 12 seconds. Now just a little over 8 minutes away from the call on the start of prop load tonight. So far, all indications suggest that they are currently on track for a launch at 9:30, 01:30 UTC. We're now T-minus 39 minutes, 23 seconds and counting. Just a little over a minute away from the start, or the call on the start of propellant load. And to bolster the point that one of our moderators, Astro Joe, is making in a live chat, we would respectfully ask that you be respectful of everyone else in the live chat, and please do not use all caps when you're communicating. That is the outdoor voice of a live chat, and we don't need that kind of energy in the live chat. So really appreciate if you just help us out, be respectful, use mixed case. Thanks very much. And our thanks to our moderators, Astro Joe, Astro Jen, working hard in the live chat to help keep things kosher. We just appreciate it if you help them out by doing your part and just speaking like you normally would. You know? Thanks so much. We're now T-minus 38 minutes, 12 seconds and counting. Want to thank E. McCoy for a $5 super chat. Thank you so much for your support this evening, E. And to the 8,200 of you who are joining us live, really appreciate your being with us tonight. If you haven't already, be sure to hit the like button and allow more folks to find this live coverage as we cruise on in towards our second launch of the night. And of course, what would a launch be without the rocket making it happen? Let's talk about the Falcon 9 rocket, the workhorse of the SpaceX fleet. This particular booster has launched 17 times before, going for its 18th tonight. Tail number 1067 in the SpaceX fleet. Falcon 9 rocket, of course, in total stands at 70 meters or 229 feet tall, with a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. Most of that is made up by the first stage, the bottom two-thirds of the rocket. At the base of the first stage are 9 Merlin engines which burn rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, which produce 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are the black carbon fiber landing legs, which will be used to land the first stage on the drone ship, a Shortfall of Gravitas. Above the first stage is the inner stage. It's a composite structure which consists of an aluminum honeycomb core that is surrounded by carbon fiber. In the image on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see those deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back through the atmosphere, tail first, like a big old dart towards the drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach to the second stage. At first stage main engine cutoff, high-pressure helium is used to release those latches. 4 pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. Second stage engine nozzle is housed safely inside the inner stage adapter until stage separation. Speaking of that second stage, the upper stage is powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine, or an MVAC engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 200,000 pounds of thrust, and it will be fired twice on today's flight, placing the 23 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. The MVAC engine burns the same propellant mix, that being rocket-grade kerosene, or RP1, and liquid oxygen, same as the first stage. It will ignite a third time after the deployment of the Starlink satellites, that is for a deorbit burn, helping to drive the upper stage back through the atmosphere where it burns up, helping to eliminate the risk of any unnecessary space debris on this mission. Finally, at the very top of this vehicle are the payload fairings, which contain the 23 Starlink satellites. The fairings are made up of a carbon composite material. They stand 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall and are 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. The two halves of the payload fairing will be recovered a little further downrange from where the first stage lands on the drone ship. They gently splash down under parachutes. And Doug is the vessel that will be scooping them up out of the Atlantic waters. And like the first stage, both vessels will be brought back into Port Canaveral, turned over to Cape Canaveral, where they will be examined, refurbished, and refreshed for reuse on a future mission. We're now currently T-minus 34 minutes, 19 seconds and counting. And with that, we have word that SpaceX has begun propellant load on tonight's Starlink 6-45 mission, which commits SpaceX to a launch attempt at 9:30 p.m. tonight. So a very good update from SpaceX as we are targeting launch number 2 out of potentially 3 on this Saturday night. We're T-minus 33 minutes, 3 seconds and counting. For all of you who are joining us from the Florida area, be sure to keep us on in the background, but want to let you know that the International Space Station will be making a passover in the next, roughly 10 minutes or so. A little bit longer than that. Right about 9:09, I believe, is the time I saw from some folks. So, if you have the Space Station Tracker app on your phone, go ahead and look skyward. Hopefully you'll see the orbiting outpost as it cruises over Florida. We will also endeavor to bring you a shot of that here on the stream so you can get a nice close-up shot of the space station, or as close as you possibly can from the ground. Currently T-minus 32 minutes and counting. In just a couple of minutes, SpaceX will start loading cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels for the first stage. That helium is used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight, and they will do the same for the second stage at about T-minus 25 minutes. Taking a look at our live chat, one of our channel members, Butterfly, asking for folks in Florida, where should you be looking to see the space station? You want to be looking low on the horizon to the north. Looks like it'll be about 10 degrees over the horizon. It's going to be going into shadow, though, so it may be a little tricky to spot, but we will do our best to try to bring you views as the passover happens.
Sempre que eu preciso, posso contar com a excelência do BTG. Dê BTG nos seus investimentos. Baixe o app.
Starting to see some of the vapor as the super cold liquid oxygen that's being loaded on board the Falcon 9 first stage meets the air that is considerably warmer here in Florida. Starting to see some of that vapor form by the base of the Falcon 9 first stage. I want to thank Mark Casada for a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Mark. Says, Mike, Crystal, and family are watching and love Spaceflight Now coverage. Thank you. Well, thank you for the kind words, Mark, and to all the family there. Hello to all of you. Hope you're having a wonderful Saturday evening, and we appreciate you being with us for our second bit of live launch coverage of the night. T-minus 26 minutes, 5 seconds and counting. I want to thank one of our wonderful channel members, Callistia Lee, for a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you, Callistia. And I will echo her comment here. Hit the thumbs up button, y'all. Let's boost this stream up so others can find it easier. And yes, to the more than 14,000 of you who are watching, first off, thanks for taking part of your Saturday to be with us, either to listen in the background as you keep your eyes to the sky if you're able to watch this in person yourself, or if you're elsewhere beyond Florida and we are your gateway to space, we are glad to be this portal for launch coverage for you. And hitting the like button allows more folks to do the same and access this live coverage. As we continue to step on through the count, mentioned this will be the 18th flight for this particular first stage booster, tail number 1067 in the SpaceX fleet. So while we have time before the big event begins, let's go ahead and wind back the clock and look at the history of this first stage booster and its notable flights to get here. Started back on June 3rd of 2021. That was a cargo resupply services, or CRS, mission to the International Space Station that sent up more than 7,300 pounds of science and supplies to the orbiting outpost. Of course, getting ready to see that fairly soon if we get lucky. CRS-22 was also the second mission under SpaceX's commercial resupply services 2 contract with NASA. Next up was the Crew 3 launch on November 11th, 2021. That was the first time it launched humans. Launch number 3 came over a month later on December 19th, 21, with the Turksat 5B launch. B-1067 flew for a 4th time on April 27th, 2022, supporting the launch of the astronauts of the Crew 4 mission. That was the last time that a Dragon flew without a Roscosmos cosmonaut on board. The crew of Crew 4 included NASA astronaut Jessica Watkins, who also became the first black woman to serve a long-duration mission in space. It was also the debut of the 4th and so far newest Crew Dragon spacecraft, dubbed Freedom. On July 14th, it was the 5th flight of this booster with another cargo Dragon. This was the CRS-25 mission. More than 5,800 pounds went up to the ISS on that flight. Flight number 6 was the first Starlink mission for this. That was Group 4-34 on September 19th, 2022. Launch number 7 was a geostationary satellite, Hotbird 13G for Eutelsat, that launched on November 3rd, 2022. The final launch of that year came on December 16th with the launch of Luxembourg-based SES's O3B mPOWER satellites number 1 and 2. Missions number 9 through 11 were all Starlink satellite missions. Those were 5-2 on January 26th, 5-5 on March 24th, 5-9 on May 14th. That was followed up by the launch on June 18th of 2023. Satria, a communication satellite for Indonesian company PSN. Next 3 launches, or the next several launches, were all Starlink flights. Those were Group 6-10 on August 17th. On October 13th, it was Group 6-22. November 22nd, Group 6-29. And on January 7th of 2024, Group 6-35. That was followed up by the Mariputa 2 launch on February 20th, 2024. And that brings us, of course, to today's launch. Getting ready to lift off in 24 minutes from now. The Starlink 6-45 mission. Taking a look back at the live chat now, want to thank channel member Mr. Hellspawn for being a member for 8 months. Love the Terminator with the shades. Little image there for you. Hellspawn with the comment, remember there are 2 types of countries in the world, those who have walked on the moon and those that use the metric system. Of course, the Artemis program is looking to expand those who are moonwalkers, starting with the Artemis 3 mission. All those who are going to be landing on the surface of the moon have yet to be named. Probably more than likely that the first 2 will be Americans, and we'll see who else gets to walk on the moon through the Artemis programs following that. A lot of partner countries who are party to the Artemis program, I'm sure, are all very eager to have their nation's astronauts set foot on our own satellite. Gary Skinner, thank you so much for a $2 super chat. Really appreciate that. And want to thank Well Reasoned Superhawk for being a channel member for 4 months. Thank you so much for your ongoing support, Well Reasoned. I think that is very well reasoned of you. And he says, hello all, beautiful night for a launch here in Orlando, Florida. Yes, indeed. Better than 95% odds of good weather for liftoff tonight. Continuing on with the good weather streak that we saw beginning with the UTEL Sat 36D mission just a few hours ago. Also want to thank Aerospace Rocketry for a $10 super chat, noting their dedication to the hobby of high-powered rockets. T-minus 21 minutes, 39 seconds and counting. Glancing back and forth between a couple of screens here in the office, just looking to see if and when we were able to get our eyes on the ISS. That passover coming up in the next about a minute or so. Of course, as soon as that comes up, we'll be sure to bring it to you if we are able to get that visible on our cameras. We're about a minute or so away from the start of the big vent as well. Again, that venting happens as the feed lines are chilled prior to second stage liquid oxygen load. And as we see the start of the big vent, we're also keeping our eyes peeled for the space station. And it looks like, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to bring you views of the ISS as we were hoping to. Oh, actually. Saw it flash across the screen for a moment. I know it's a tricky process to lock into something going at 17,500 miles per hour. Well, we gave it the old college try, and next time that happens, of course, we will endeavor to bring that to you again. And with the big vent having wrapped up, we're T-minus 16 minutes, 7 seconds and counting, preparing to begin liquid oxygen load on the Falcon 9 second stage. Taking a look at the live chat, want to thank a few more folks for your support tonight. Really appreciate that. Our thanks to David the Yorkshire Man for a £2 super chat. Thank you so much, David. Noting that 2 new spaceports are being built in the UK to support launch, which is always exciting to see new spaceports come online, and we certainly look forward to covering missions from them when that happens. Our thanks to Julene Irwin as well for $2 super chat. Thanks so much, Julene. Welcome to Richard Barton, channel membership at the pad leader level. Really appreciate your support, Richard. Welcome aboard. Of course, channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop.spaceflightnow.com, the ability to watch all of our Cape-based missions in 4K, and access to our member-only videos here on YouTube. Our thanks to Kyle Boyce for a $5 super chat. Saying that an app that he uses T-minus 12 minutes, 45 seconds and counting. Coming up, the next milestone will be at T-minus 7 minutes when the chill down of the 9 Merlin 1D engines gets underway. It involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps to protect them from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. Our thanks to Wilson Clan for a $2 super chat. Really appreciate that, Wilson. Mitchell Wilbur, thank you so much for a very generous $20 super chat, supporting us with channel membership. Mitchell says, I like supporting this channel. It sticks to the mission at hand without all the other nonsense that's out there. Will and all involved. Thank you so much, Mitchell, for the kind words and for the support. Thanks also to CompUser BS with a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, CompUser. This is Tim from Portland, Oregon. Love the launches. 2 of 3 watched since Vandenberg, since I was 4 years old in 1969. Met Jim Lovell, Gene Kranz, and Tom Hanks at the same time, which is very cool, and I'm super jealous. Go SpaceX fans. Each launch is history. We're getting a great view of this launch and the payload fairings. This coming from our friend Pete Karstens with Max Q Productions. As the evening has gone on, we're getting a little more heat distortion here than what would be ideal, but unfortunately there's not a whole heck of a lot we can do about that. That's just what it is at this time of night. Our thanks to Laura Del Zotto for a very generous $50 super chat. Thank you so much, Laura, for supporting us at that level. Really, really appreciate that. Laura says, love SpaceX, and we are so thankful for these broadcast coverages. We're more than happy to bring them to you, and support helps us make it all possible. So we're now just a little over 10 minutes away from the liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 6-45 mission. 23 Starlinks on board. Getting ready to add to the more than 5,600 that are currently on orbit, according to astronomer and expert tracker of satellites Jonathan McDowell. To date, there have been 6,079 Starlink satellites launched. And again, this will be the 20th Starlink mission in 2024, now less than 10 minutes away. Yeah. T-minus 9 minutes, 17 seconds and counting. We hit it a little bit earlier on the broadcast, but because the T0 jumped, I want to go ahead and talk about the trajectory for this mission for those who may have missed it the first time around. We do have nearly 25,000 of you, so not hard to imagine that there are some who were not with us at the last go-around. Also, be sure to hit the like button to allow more folks to find this live coverage as we cruise on into the final little less than 9 minutes before launch now. Falcon 9 rocket is going to be lifting off from Space Launch Complex 40, or Slick 40, over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. It will send the 23 Starlink satellites on board up to the 6th shell of the SpaceX Starlink constellation, which means it's going to be flying in a southeasterly trajectory, heading toward just a little east of the Bahamas. Following stage separation, the first stage booster will be landing on the SpaceX drone ship, a Shortfall of Gravitas. The other East Coast vessel was used, or the other East Coast drone ship, I should say. Just read the instructions. was used for the Eutelsat 36D mission just earlier tonight. Go ahead and leave this up for folks for just a moment here, since we do get quite a number of questions about trajectory, and so go ahead and take this in for a moment. If the skies are clear for our friends in southern Florida, you should be able to get a pretty nice view of the Falcon 9 as it cruises on from Florida's Space Coast. Now about 7.5 minutes away from liftoff, about less than 30 seconds away from the start of the engine chill down sequence. SpaceX fairings splash down in the Atlantic under the support of parachutes just a little bit further down from the map that we just showed you. SpaceX saves about $6 million with each recovery, so it's an important part of their business model and bringing down the cost of launches to be able to recover and reuse these payload fairings. They are brought aboard recovery vessels like the one you see here. Doug is the vessel that'll be used for tonight's mission for this launch. Bob, the other vessel, was used earlier today when it supported the Eutelsat 36D mission. Both ships will be heading back to Port Canaveral. In fact, this has been the fastest turnaround to date of Launch Complex 39A with the Eutelsat 36D mission. SpaceX continues to push for a more airport-like cadence as time goes on, and they're slowly but surely making their way there. This, of course, set to be the 31st launch for the company so far this year, and the 106th within the last 365 days. So SpaceX certainly moving quickly on those goals. Less than 6 minutes now to launch. We should be getting views from SpaceX and mission audio as well in about a minute. At that point, we'll be able to let you hear the sounds of the pad as the strongback retract sequence is getting ready to begin about a minute from now. Before we get to that point, though, I want to thank a few more folks for your support, which is very much appreciated. Lisa from Florida with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Lisa. XR Sue with a $5 super chat as well. Thank you so much, Sue. Austin with a $2 super chat. Thank you, Austin. Nexus FFO, $5 as well. Thank you, Nexus. One of our wonderful channel members, Nelson Reyes, gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships. Thank you, Nelson. Really appreciate that bit of generosity into our newest
Falcon
channel
9
members.
tanks are pressing for strongback retract.
Be sure to thank Nelson in the live chat. And if you couldn't tell, we are joined by another voice, that is SpaceX Mission Audio. So as those callouts are made, I will endeavor to not talk over them so we can all hear those callouts as they happen. Clamp arms underneath the payload fairings are going to open up.
Strongback retract has started.
As you hear, the transport erector is about to lean back away about 1.5 degrees from the Falcon 9 rocket. Coming up on the final 4 minutes before liftoff, our thanks to Bernard Stote for a $10 super chat. Thank you, Bernard. Really appreciate that support. Jack Yates for a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you, Jack, for supporting us at that level. Dr. Nick Campitelli for $2 super chat. Thank you, Dr. Nick. And I will refrain from going further into Simpsons jokes, since I'm sure that you hear that all the time and are sick of it. I empathize with Lost in Space references in my name. But Dr. Nick says, thanks watching at Jetty Park. Love this. You can see there the transport erector reclined back away from the Falcon 9 rocket. The lights on at the crew access tower just to the right of the rocket in this viewpoint here. Of course, we saw the first time that that tower was put to use on the CRS-30 mission just earlier this month.
Novo Dolce Gusto Pingado. Dias mais gostosos começam com um pingado.
Our thanks to Tara Prime for a $5 super chat. Thank you, Tara. Tara says that she had the Feel the Heat tickets to the Falcon Heavy STP-2 mission that launched from KSC in June 2019 and still have the parking placard for it. Amazing. Thanks for all you do. Thanks, Tara. I'm sure that was
Stage 1 lock slot is complete.
a wonderful mission to watch. At call for Stage 1 LOX load complete. Closing out one of the final fueling items here on this Falcon 9 rocket. We're just waiting for confirmation that Stage 2 LOX load has wrapped up. Our thanks to Robert C. for a $5 super chat as well. And God bless Elon and all the engineers that have changed the future of spaceflight. As we come into the last 2 minutes, I want to thank just a couple more folks briefly before we put our full attention on this mission. Now, Robert Harold, channel member, with a $5 super chat, saying, "So excited. This launch will be even more exciting seeing it in the dark of night." And to Catherine Driscoll with a $10 super chat.
Stage 2 lock slot is complete.
With that call up, Falcon 9 is now fully fueled with 1 million pounds of propellant, starting the process of ground gas closeouts, which is the venting that you're seeing here on your screen. Catherine says, "In the memory of my father who worked for NASA and Lockheed from the early days of the space boom through the space shuttle." Well, we certainly appreciate all the work that your father did, Catherine, and all the hardworking men and women across the space industry.
Ground gas closeouts?
Both in the public and private sector. We'll come back to these live chats on the other side of the launch, but for now, as we close in on the final minute, let's focus our energy here and concentrate. Make sure we give you all the relevant information as this rocket gets ready to launch in just about 1 minute.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
Another good call out here. She hear the call for go for launch from the SpaceX launch director in the next few seconds.
Go for launch.
And with that call out, SpaceX is ready to lift off its second Falcon 9 rocket of the day less than 30 seconds from now. "15 seconds. And here we go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff. For the second time today, a Falcon 9 rocket takes to the skies above Florida. The Falcon 9 has cleared the tower at pad 40. Against clear skies, let's listen to the roar of those 9 Merlin 1D engines. Getting some great views from our tracking team. This view from Chuck Briggs. This from our own Adam Bernstein. And Pete Karstens with Max Q Productions. Now approaching a minute into flight. A nominal flight so far of the Falcon 9 rocket. Call out that the vehicle is supersonic, traveling faster than the speed of sound. Rocket now passing through max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. At this point, we have less than a minute left on the burn of those first stage engines. Coming up, we'll hit a few different markers in rapid succession. T plus 2 minutes, 26 seconds will hit MECO, or first stage main engine cutoff. That'll be followed by stage separation, and then SES-1, or second stage engine start. Then a little after 3 minutes, the payload fairings will deploy, exposing the Starlink satellites to the vacuum of space for the first time on this mission. We're now a little more than 2 minutes into flight. Some brilliant color from those Merlin engines. Do hear from our friend Pete Carstens with Max Q Productions. As you see Miko, stage separation. And the ignition of that Merlin vacuum engine. And you see those events on the SpaceX feed and the delay on the right-hand side of your screen. A nice view of Florida from the second stage engine, or the second stage cameras. Coming up on payload fairing deployment in a few seconds. Nice little plume effect, or jellyfish effect, as you see those payload fairings falling away, catching the reflection of the Merlin vacuum engine. And there you see the fairing falling away in the onboard camera views. Now a little over 3.5 minutes into flight, you can still very clearly see those payload fairings glinting in Pete Carsten's tracking camera view here, as you're seeing some stars cruise by. Or rather, the second stage cruise by some stars in the background. Now coming up on the 4th minute into flight. The next event we're looking for is just about T plus 6 minutes and 10 seconds. That's when the first stage entry burn will begin. That burn lasting 23 seconds. And a note from SpaceX that both the Falcon 9 first stage and second stage are following nominal flight paths, so everything on course with this mission so far. Now a little over 4 minutes, 48 seconds into this flight. Still getting some great tracking views from Pete. Adam Bernstein also has his eyes on the second stage as well. We're now just about a minute from the start of the first stage entry burn beginning. Still hearing a good flight path for both the first and second stages of the Falcon 9 rocket as we head past 5.5 minutes into flight. Again, that entry burn set to begin at T plus 6 minutes and 10 seconds. We will try to bring you views of the entry burn from our cameras on the ground here if we can. That entry burn now underway. And our Pete Carstens has it. Well done, Pete. It looks like Adam's got eyes on it too in the tracker. This burn just about to wrap up. We see it continuing on in the slight delay from the SpaceX feed here.
Stage 2 FPS shutdown.
With the conclusion of that entry burn, you can see the speedometer has been falling rapidly,
Both stages are on a nominal trajectory.
and both the Falcon 9 first and second stages continue to follow the flight path that they were intended. Now a little over 7 minutes into flight, less than a minute away from the start of the first stage landing burn.
Stage 1 transonic.
What that called the Falcon 9 first stage traveling below the speed of sound. Coming upon the start of that landing burn, less than 10 seconds from now. In real time. The time you want to be looking for the visual, though, is at the bottom of your screen. So again, T plus 8 minutes and 4 seconds. Now less than 10 seconds away on the SpaceX feed.
Stage 2's in terminal guidance. Stage 1 landing burn.
And there we go. Drone ship views should be coming into play on the right-hand side of your screen as well momentarily. There we go.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy.
With the legs extended, we have a touchdown.
Stage 1 landing confirmed.
Slight wobble there, but it appears to be a good landing of this Falcon 9 first stage booster. Tail number 1067 in the SpaceX fleet, landing for an 18th time.
And back shutdown.
Nominal park orbit insertion.
And with that call for a good parking orbit, the Falcon 9 second stage will remain in this coast phase until T plus 54 minutes and 3 seconds, when there will be a quick 1 second burn of that Merlin vacuum engine, setting it for Starlink satellite deployment at T plus 1 hour, 5 minutes and 12 seconds. And so far, we are on track for our first 2 missions, both aces so far from Florida's Space Coast. Good launch, good landing from Pad 39A and Pad 40. Of course, we will hold off to declare full victory on this one for SpaceX until they're able to deploy those Starlink satellites, again coming up in just about an hour, a little less than an hour at this point. But moving along well towards a planned triple header tonight. 2 for 2 so far, and aiming for a third from California with a liftoff set currently for 7:30 p.m. Pacific, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 02:30 UTC. They do have backup opportunities lasting until 11:30 p.m. Pacific, though, so still quite a ways left in that window, and the weather was definitely a watch item for the Vandenberg launch, so folks in Southern California, let me know what you're seeing if you're in the area of Vandenberg. If it seems pretty cloudy, but I'm guessing it probably still is. As we go ahead and wind things down, though, on this live coverage, do want to make a point to thank the folks who have supported us for this mission. So our thanks to the Jupiter Experiment. We're a $5 super chat. Thank you so much. Jupiter says, thank you for bringing this one to the world. It is our pleasure to do so. Our thanks to Alex Casson for our $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Alex. Who says thank you for your channel. I appreciate that. Carlos Miranda with a $2 super chat. Just saying nice. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you to Kevin Campbell for a very generous $20 super chat. Really appreciate you supporting us at that level, Kevin. Thank you so much. Kenneth Theriot with a $2 super chat saying, my son loves watching these launches. I'm glad we could bring them to you and your son, Kenneth. Thanks for your support this evening. Our thanks to John Young for the $2 super chat as well. Thank you, John, for your support this evening. Tracy Nichols also with a $20 super chat. Thank you, Tracy, for supporting us at that level. And John Young with a series of 3 more $2 super chats. Really appreciate all that support tonight, John. Thank you so much. And to our channel member, Callistia Lee, for another $20 super chat. Thank you, Callistia. Says thank you for the awesome coverage, Will, and all of Spaceflight Now. You're the best, especially our mods. And yes, the moderators are very much the heroes of the live chat, so thanks to Astro Jen, Astro Joe, Stephanie B, Rusty Shackelford. Thanks to all of you for helping out in the live chat. Well, we won't actually see the Starlink satellite deployment. SpaceX actually right now working on bringing that transport erector back upright. Part of their process of turning around this pad as quickly as possible. This is what the process of satellite deployment looks like. This view from a mission back on October 21st of last year. You can see the Starlink V2 minis drifting away and a reflection of the upper stage of the Falcon 9 reflected in that panel there. You're so nice, we showed it to you twice. That's what we're going with behind the scenes. Here's one last view of those Starlinks drifting away from the Falcon and upper stage on that mission. And before we go ahead and close things out for tonight, we will do as we always do, bring you the mission stats as they currently stand now that we have a successful liftoff and landing of this first stage booster. As mentioned, this was the 18th flight of Falcon 9 booster, tail number 1067 in the SpaceX fleet. The 316th Falcon 9 launch to date. This was the 31st Falcon 9 launch of 2024. The 260th Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This was SpaceX's 32nd launch of the year, including Starship's integrated flight test. This was the 106th orbital launch for SpaceX in the last 365 days. This was the 176th orbital launch from Pad 40, the 231st overall orbital launch from this pad. Taking a look at the bar graph form of all that data, we are now at launch number 31 on the year for SpaceX, and they could tack on 32 before the night is out. Moving on to some recovery stats. This was the 63rd landing on the drone ship, a Shortfall of Gravitas, the 225th SpaceX drone ship landing, the 290th overall booster landing to date. Finally, moving out to some industry stats, this was the 22nd orbital launch from Florida this year, the 33rd from U.S. soil, the 36th orbital launch from a U.S. rocket company, when you add on, of course, the 3 from New Zealand on behalf of Rocket Lab. This was the 61st orbital launch from around the globe, including, unfortunately, 2 launch failures, one from China, one from Japan. Pulling out to our pie chart of the global view of orbital launches, with this, the U.S. tips at 60% of all launches this year. Number 2, of course, is China with 13 launches, Russia with 4, Japan with 3, India and Iran with 2 apiece. before I close it out completely, want to thank a few more folks for your support this evening. Access Decline 69 with a $3 super chat. Thank you so much, Access. It says, thanks, Will. Awesome job as usual. And I will spread the thanks across the board to the team here at Spaceflight Now. This is very much not a one-person operation. Also want to thank Marty Stark for a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Marty, for your support at that level. Thanks to Lee Edmonds, also for a $10 super chat. Thank you so much for your support tonight, Lee. Jacques Ku with a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Jacques. Thanks to Frank Giorgiani Jr. for $10 super chat. This is on behalf of Frankie and Dominic Giorgiani at SUNY Polytech in Utica, Elon and all the engineers who are bringing us to Mars and beyond. And we do have one more mission on the books for tonight. Weather being what it is, things are starting to slip a little bit. We do have word that launch has shifted its T0 liftoff time. It currently now stands at 8:54 p.m. Pacific. It was previously 7:30 p.m. Pacific, now shuffled back to 8:54 p.m. Assuming this launch does go forward tonight, though, of course, we will be back with you for our live launch coverage on the third mission of the weekend for SpaceX. You can look for that starting here on the channel 30 minutes before liftoff. We look forward to having you back for that as well. And keep tabs on our social media as well as on our website, spaceflightnow.com, the launch schedule for any further updates on the T0 time for this mission. Want to thank our friends P. Carsons with Max Q Productions and Chuck Briggs for helping to support our tracking work on this mission tonight. Our thanks as well to the fellows behind the lens, Adam Bernstein, Michael Kane, also doing some launch photography as well. Be sure to keep up with them and all of their work. You can find Adam at Aburn NYC and Michael Kane at MD Kane Jr. If you're not already, follow Spaceflight Now on X, Threads, Facebook, and Instagram, simply at Spaceflight Now. And be sure to subscribe to us here on YouTube if you haven't already. Click the bell icon and make sure you have all notifications turned on. That way you never miss another one of our live streams or when we post new videos here to the channel. Our thanks to our editor, Stephen Young, for running the technical operations of the broadcast. And most importantly, thanks to you for spending part of your evening with us for launch number 2 of the SpaceX feed. As you see the transporter Raptor going back up, getting ready for another launch on another day. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, we will see you for round 3, another Starlink mission heading up from California, the Golden State. We'll see if they have a golden opportunity with the weather. Time will tell. But until then, I'm Will Robinson Smith. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, be good to yourself, be good to others, and we will see you next time. Maybe in just a little bit here. Until then, though, bye-bye.